Hi everyone, this is Mindy Eggen, and I am so excited to share with you these new coloring stencils from Fawn. I will be creating one card for you in today's video, but stick around to the end where I'm sharing more cards and more inspiration. If you struggle with coloring or coloring in small images, this is going to be the product for you. They also are making it so super easy to do. And as of right now, these are the 3 stamp sets that these products are going to coordinate with. So for each of these stamp sets, you are going to get or you can purchase a color layering stencil. Now, when I say color layering, it doesn't mean you're layering on top of another color. What it's doing is coloring in the image for you. So instead of using markers or colored pencils, all you need is some ink and some blending brushes. For the Whoosh Kites set, you are getting 3 layering stencils, and it has little etchings in the stencil, so it's going to show you where you can line up with that particular image and the areas to color in. So you will have an area to color in for each of the mice, the kites, the grass, the butterfly, everything or every image on there, you have a coordinating stencil to color it in. There's also a new one available for the treat cart stamp set. Again, you are getting a stencil or there's going to be an area to color in every image on that particular stamp set for the treat cart. You have your cart, you have your sign, you have all the little ice cream pieces. And it does say at the very top what stencil it belongs to or what stamp set it belongs to. So this will say treat cart and it's going to say 1 of 3 or 2 of 3 or 3 of 3. And then there's also one available now for critters in the desert. Now, in this particular one, there are only 2 stencils, but for the turtle, you have 2 options on how you want to color it up. And it says it right on the stencil. It says the turtle shell option 1 and turtle shell option 2. So, depending on what design you want to do, you have options on how to color that in. And Fawn definitely thought this through when they were designing them because they are sized perfectly to fit right inside your pocket, however you store your stamp sets. Mine are stored in, it's like a 4x6 or it's meant for a 4x6 stamp set. So I can just tuck these right in between the coordinating die set and the stamp set. So I always have it with this coordinating stamp set. I'm going to create a clean and simple card using some images from the Whoosh Kites stamp set. So I'm placing my images that I plan on using down onto some 80-pound white cardstock, and I'm going to ink them up with the Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink. So still the same process as if I were going to be using alcohol markers. I'm going to stamp them down twice to make sure I get a really nice clean impression of that outline. There are many different ways that you can hold your stencils in place over your images, and I've used quite a few of them over the years. Today, I'm going to use this 9x12 sticky mat from Altenew. So it's nice and large. I'll be able to put my cardstock on top, and that is the sticky mat's going to hold my cardstock in place for me. Another thing I found really helpful is I can finally put my mini ink cubes to use. I have these, I can't part with them, and these work out perfectly when it comes to using them for these smaller images. Now, another product that I found super useful is using some small blending brushes. There are a few different ones out on the market. These are the detail blending brushes from Gina K Designs. I really like the short bristles on it. I don't feel like my bristles are fanning out too far, and I can really hone in and get into those small areas of the stencil. Now we can jump in and start coloring in our images. So I am going to start with this cute little mouse down here at the bottom. I found the open area of the stencil that matches him, and I'm going to line that up with my stamped image. Now, because I'm using a sticky mat, all I need to do is just kind of push down where my stencil is overlapping the sticky mat, and that mat's going to hold my stencil in place for me. Because I'm using such a small blending brush, I don't feel the need to mask off any areas of the stencil. These small bristles are really going to get into that small area, and I'm not concerned with possibly getting any ink on any other part of my cardstock. I'm starting out with pizza crust ink, and what you can do is just add this one layer of color. You could maybe go a little heavier handed on one side to give it that little bit of dimension. But because I love ink blending and I love my detailed blending brushes and stencils, I'm going to bring in a little bit darker shade. So I'm going to bring in dough ink, and I'm going to apply that to the right side of my mouse. So just like if I was coloring with my Copic markers, I would have one side shaded a little darker than the other to add a shadow area and give him a little bit of definition. And you may also notice that because I'm working with such a large sticky mat, that I am able to put my ink pad right on there, and it is going to grip my mini ink cube so it's not moving around when I'm picking up the ink with my blending brush. And then I can just peel that up. You can see how our mouse is colored in, and I'm going to shift this over to the belly for my mouse. So I'm going to line that up over the area, kind of push my stencil down so my sticky mat grabs it. And then I'm going to come in with Peachy Keen ink, just adding a little bit of that light color on the belly. I can then pick up my stencil. I'm going to shift it once more. And as we work from left to right in kind of that row on the stencil, you're going to see there's an area to do the nose and the ear. You could go a little bit darker of a pink here if you wanted to, but I found the Peachy Keen worked really well. And our mouse is all colored in. It was so quick, and these are so easy to just pick up, shift across your cardstock, move around. You can just attach your cardstock to your work surface with some repositionable tape, which is what I have done in the past, or maybe using Post-it tape to hold your stencil down. There's also the Make Art Station. So any type of product to hold your stencil in place will work for this. I just found with the sticky mat, it did make things go a little bit quicker for me. I didn't have to move any magnets and whatnot. I just needed to pick up my stencil. So I really loved that there were stencils for these kites because I'll be honest, I really struggled coloring in the kites. I just never really knew where to put my light source. With the coloring layering stencil or the coloring stencil, I don't really need to think about it. I just kind of had one little area light and one area dark. Now for these kites, I did them all in the same colors. I did bubblegum for my pink and merman for my teal color. Now, when you line up one area of the kite, it's also going to have the little bow too, so just look out for that. Now, with my butterfly, I didn't even grab an ink cube. I still had some ink left on one of my yellow blending brushes, so I just used leftover ink. Moving my stencil down to my other kites, this one I'm going to put the darker area on the outer edge. Doesn't really matter as long as you really, in my opinion, as long as you have one side a little darker than the other, that kind of gives it more of a dimensional look, but you certainly don't have to do that. You can definitely just add an entire color over that open area of the stencil and quickly color it in. And yes, I love my coloring. I love all of my alcohol markers that I use, but honestly, there are times I just don't feel like it. And these coloring stencils are making it so super quick and easy to do. And also, sometimes my eyes cannot handle those super small areas like those bows on the kite. I struggled coloring those in because either my marker tip was too big or I have a hard time seeing them sometimes. So by using these stencils, oh my gosh, it was really fun to do. It was really quick, and it makes my job so much easier when I'm trying to color in these areas. So this isn't going to necessarily replace my coloring. I am still going to color in Lawn Fawn images with my markers, but this is just an additional option, and I love having options. I finished off my clouds just using a little bit of leftover ink that I had on my brush, so they're just very lightly covered. And then I can peel up my cardstock from my sticky mat. So now all of my images are colored in and they look so super cute. I'm going to grab the coordinating die for each of the images and I'm going to line them up and then hold them down with a low tack tape and run them through my die cut machine to die cut everything out. Once I have my images ready, then I'm going to start working on a background. And this is going to be just a really quick, clean and simple background for my little mouse and his assortment of kites. Again, I brought out my sticky mat and I have a piece of 80-pound white cardstock cut to 4¼ by 5½. I'm bringing out the Slimline Simple Grassy Stencil. It's got just a little bit of a curve to it, and I do like using the Slimline stencils on occasion because they stretch out so much farther past my cardstock, which means my sticky mat is really going to grip that, and my stencil's not going to shift. I'm starting with Cilantro Ink and I'm using a flat blending brush to apply the color. I'm starting at the top of the grassy area and just kind of blending down so it's going to soften and get lighter as I get down towards the bottom of the cardstock. And then I'm going to be bringing in a darker shade to once again add a little bit of contrast and dimension to my grass. This color is going to be Artichoke. I have it just at the very top, kind of blending down about a quarter of the way. Then I can peel the stencil up and I am going to shift it down and I'm going to line up the top part of that stencil. So it's going to mask off my grass. And then I can bring in this Slimline cloudy stencil to add a little bit of a cloudy scene to my background. So again, just positioning that where I want it to go. I'm kind of starting in the center of my stencil and then letting the sticky mat grab the edges there. I started out with kiddie pool ink and that flat blending brush. The thing with the flat blending brushes is that they really do give a lighter application than, let's say, one of the handled blending brushes. And because kiddie pool is light, it was a little bit too light. I kind of peeked underneath and it was a little too light of an ink for me. So I'm bringing in Merman ink and very light-handed adding that. So I start on the stencil and kind of blend my way up and off of the stencil to give that light outline of the clouds. I'm going to peel the stencil up, shift that down and over so I'm getting a different section of clouds, add some more of that ink, and just continue that down the front of my cardstock. I love these stencils because I can flip them over and use the other side as well. Now, as I get towards the bottom, what I'll end up doing is just taking my ink and going from the grass up. Unfortunately, I did not clean my grassy stencil, so I did pick up a little bit of that artichoke ink, but I'm hoping that wasn't too noticeable. I'm just kind of starting on that stencil once again and blending some of that blue up into the background to complete my cloudy scene. And then I can use my tweezers to help kind of peel up my cardstock, and then I'll just bend it back into its shape. There's a little bit of a bend to it, but not a crease. So I bent that back into shape and I'm bringing this over to my Mindy stamping tool to stamp a sentiment at the bottom. I brought in my die cut images, placing them on the cardstock about how I want them to go so I know exactly where I want to place my sentiment. I'm going to use the one that says, I really look up to you, because I thought it was cute where my mouse is looking up at all the kites. So I placed that down onto my cardstock panel, removed my images, and picked up that sentiment with the door of the Misty. And then I'm going to ink it up with a VersaFine ink. I usually like to use the VersaFine ink when I'm stamping on top of blended backgrounds. So since there really isn't much else to this card, I ended up putting some thin foam squares behind all of the kites and my mouse. He's just kind of sitting on the front of the card right now. One of the clouds I put behind my kite, and then I added the foam square behind that. So I attached the cloud with liquid glue and added the thin foam squares behind. And there is going to be another cloud that I'm going to attach, but it's going to go in front of the kite. So I'm peeling off the backing of all of those foam squares and placing my kites on the front of the card. I started with my mouse in the bottom, and then I have the heart one that's kind of centered above the mouse. Did I say mice? Mouse, because there's only one. And then placed my kites around that. Then here is that one additional cloud. I added a little bit of liquid glue to one side and a thin foam square to the other. And then I can't forget my cute little butterfly that's going to be floating by on the top. One other thing I did was take a white gel pen and I added highlights to the side of my kites and my mouse just to add a little bit more interest to it, since this is a pretty clean and simple card. And I'm going to call that good on this one. So this is my finished card project using those coloring stencils for the image. And I do have one I created beforehand. On my original one, I did die cut out the front panel using a stitched rectangle die. So there's a little bit more to that one, but not much. They're fairly the same. I did also add a little bit of stickles around the outer edge of my cloud. So even for clean and simple, I thought this came out so super cute. Now here is a look at my other card I created. This one is using the tree cart coloring stencils. Such a super cute scene, and all those little pieces like the ice cream and the sundae, they were so quick to color up. A lot of times I have leftover ink left on my brushes, so I didn't even need to bring out any ink pads because I just used what was left on the brushes. And then I have another card I did, and this one is using the critters in the desert. I have a little canyon scene in the background. I added some sun rays to that background, but wow, these images were so fun to use with the color layering stencils. So there you go, guys. Brand new product from Lawn Fawn, the coloring stencils. I keep saying color layering, but they're coloring stencils. I hope you enjoy these as much as I did. I think you are really going to love them. I'm going to have all of my supplies listed down below in the video description and over on my blog as well. I want to thank you so much for spending time with me today, and I'll see you again soon.